In the dying embers of the Napoleonic Wars, when Europe bled gold as much as blood, one man watched not from the battlefield, but from a counting room. His weapon was not a sword, but a ledger. His empire wasn't built on conquest, but calculation. This is the story of the banker who betrayed Napoleon and, in doing so, quietly reshaped the destiny of the modern world. Stay tuned, because the secret you're about to hear is how the fate of nations can hinge on a single financial transaction. Like, subscribe, and step into the shadowed halls of history. Behind the roar of cannons and the march of armies, another war raged, the war of finance. Empires rise and fall not only by generals but by the men who fund them. As Napoleon swept through Europe with his Grande Armée, the lifeblood of his empire, gold, began to drain. While soldiers fought on muddy fields, one man in London was already calculating his next move, waiting for a moment of chaos to turn into unimaginable opportunity. This was not just war, it was business at its most ruthless. He was Nathan Mayer Rothschild, a man of iron nerves, lightning intellect, and ruthless precision. Born into modest beginnings in Frankfurt's Jewish ghetto, he built his power through a network of brothers spanning Europe's capitals. Together, they created the world's first truly international financial system, faster than armies, more powerful than monarchs. Yet behind Nathan's sharp gaze lay a question of loyalty. Would he serve the emperor who once threatened his people, or the market that promised him immortality? The answer would change the financial order of the world. The year was 1815. Napoleon had escaped from exile and was marching toward Paris. Panic gripped Europe's markets. Governments scrambled to raise funds. Currencies collapsed. In London, Nathan Rothschild controlled the largest private reserve of gold in the world. His ships, messengers, and coded letters allowed him to know battlefield outcomes days before anyone else. He didn't need to fight for empires, he owned the means to rebuild them. As the drums of Waterloo echoed in the distance, Nathan prepared not for battle, but for a financial coup that would echo for centuries. At dawn on June 18, 1815, two forces collided, Napoleon's veterans and Wellington's allied army. But hundreds of miles away, Nathan's couriers waited near the Belgian border. When the battle ended, it wasn't a general who knew first, it was a banker. Within 24 hours, Rothschild's agents were racing toward London with the news that Napoleon had been defeated. Nathan now held the most valuable commodity in the world, information. And in finance, knowledge is not power, it is profit. According to legend, Rothschild arrived at the London Stock Exchange before anyone knew the truth. His face was grim, his silence spoke louder than words. Believing Napoleon had won, investors panicked and dumped government bonds. Prices collapsed, just as Rothschild quietly began buying them all. When official confirmation of Wellington's victory arrived, the market exploded upward, and Rothschild's fortune multiplied overnight. Whether myth or truth, the story remains a chilling lesson: the man who controlled the message controlled the world. This was not mere greed. It was foresight. Nathan understood what kings did not, that finance could conquer where armies could not. With the wealth from Waterloo, he transformed the Rothschild house into the undisputed ruler of European credit. Nations borrowed, monarchs begged, and empires trembled at his signature. From the ashes of Napoleon's defeat rose a new power structure, not of swords and cannons, but of bonds and banks. The financial revolution had begun. While France mourned, London celebrated. The Rothschilds became the invisible architects of Europe's restoration. They financed railroads, rebuilt cities, and lent to governments rebuilding after decades of war. But beneath the polished surface, resentment grew. To many, Nathan was not a savior, he was a traitor who had profited from his homeland's humiliation. To others, he was a visionary who proved that empires could be ruled not by emperors, but by economics. The truth, as always, lay somewhere in between. The 19th century became the Rothschild century. Their network of banks stretched from London to Paris, Vienna, Naples, and Frankfurt. Coded messages crossed borders faster than any royal courier. They financed canals, mines, and wars. Even governments that despised each other shared a common creditor, the House of Rothschild. In an age of monarchs, Nathan had built a new kind of throne, one forged from capital and trust. He didn't rule men, he ruled their debts. Napoleon once declared that war was waged with money, and when money ran out, war ended. Rothschild had taken that truth and turned it into empire. He lent to Britain during war, invested in peace, and positioned himself above the nations themselves. The irony was staggering. While Napoleon sought to dominate Europe by conquest, Nathan conquered it through commerce. The battlefield of Austerlitz faded, but the bonds of Rothschild endured. History would remember Napoleon's fall, but it would live under Nathan's shadow. The betrayal, some historians say, was not personal but systemic. Napoleon's downfall wasn't just military, it was financial. His blockade of Britain failed because British credit remained strong. And that credit was sustained by men like Rothschild, who moved gold through hidden routes, defying Napoleon's economic war. In the end, it was not bullets but banknotes that broke the emperor. And the man who orchestrated that flow became the silent architect of Europe's future. But every empire, even a financial one, casts shadows. As the Rothschilds' influence grew, so did suspicion. Pamphlets circulated accusing them of manipulating markets, controlling monarchs, and engineering wars for profit. Whether myth or jealousy, the narrative stuck. Nathan was seen as the spider at the center of Europe's web, a man whose pen could topple kings. Yet despite the slander, his power only deepened. The banker who betrayed Napoleon had now become a legend. By the 1820s, Nathan Rothschild was lending to entire nations. He underwrote loans for Britain, Prussia, and Austria. He stabilized currencies, financed colonies, and ensured empires against collapse. Yet, in his mansion on St. Swithin's Lane, he lived modestly, plain suit, no titles, no fanfare. His real wealth was secrecy. He once said, "I care not who makes the laws of a nation, if I can control its money." It wasn't arrogance, it was truth. Napoleon's betrayal became Nathan's blueprint. Every empire had its weakness: greed, pride, or debt. Rothschild exploited all three. He taught Europe that power was no longer measured by land, but by liquidity. Governments might fall, revolutions might burn, but as long as gold moved through his vaults, his dynasty would survive. He didn't just change finance, he changed the definition of empire itself. When Nathan died in 1836, he left behind not just fortune but philosophy. The Rothschild method, secrecy, communication, coordination, became the model for modern banking. His sons inherited his vision and expanded it across continents. Even America, once isolated from Europe's wars, would soon learn that its economy could be shaped by unseen hands. Nathan's betrayal had rippled across oceans. By the late 19th century, the world Nathan helped create had become unstoppable. Central banks, government bonds, and stock markets replaced royal decrees. Money became the new monarch, anonymous, efficient, absolute. The betrayal of Napoleon was not a single act but the birth of a system, one that still governs our lives today. The true genius of Rothschild wasn't deception, it was vision. He saw that loyalty to empire was fleeting, but loyalty to finance was eternal. Napoleon fell because he fought nations. Nathan triumphed because he funded them. His betrayal was not against a man, but for a future where capital ruled kings. Even now, his legacy lingers. Every modern financial crisis, every market collapse, every government bailout echoes that first great manipulation at Waterloo. Information still moves faster than truth. Markets still reward the few who know before others. The rules of Nathan Rothschild's world remain unbroken. The tale of the banker who betrayed Napoleon is more than history, it's prophecy. It reminds us that the real battles are not fought with armies, but with influence, timing, and trust. In every era, there are Napoleons who command, and Rothschilds who control. Which would you rather be? If history has a moral, it's this: power changes hands, but wealth endures. Napoleon dreamed of an empire of men. Nathan built an empire of money. And while cannon fire fades, compound interest never sleeps. Like, subscribe, and remember, behind every great victory lies a greater financier. The 20th century dawned on the foundations Nathan built. His descendants were no longer mere bankers, they were the keepers of Europe's stability. Wars came and went, yet their institutions endured, discreet, efficient, untouchable. Even during World War I, Rothschild houses quietly financed both reconstruction and diplomacy. Their gold flowed to whichever side ensured balance, not ideology. They were no longer men but mechanisms, the invisible gears of global finance. What began as betrayal against an emperor had evolved into a perpetual system of calculated neutrality, the art of profiting from peace and surviving through chaos. As Europe industrialized, Rothschild investments fueled progress. Railways stretched like veins across continents, connecting cities and empires. Mines produced the coal and iron of modern civilization. But for every gleaming locomotive, there was a whisper that a single family's influence extended beyond politics, shaping destinies through silent agreements. In truth, their success came not from conspiracy but competence. Nathan's descendants had mastered the science of risk when others gambled. They turned volatility into opportunity. The Napoleonic betrayal had been only the beginning of a century-long lesson in how information and patience could outweigh armies and crowns. Then came the Age of America, a new power born from the ashes of Europe's wars. The Rothschilds, ever watchful, adapted swiftly. Their methods inspired J.P. Morgan, Rockefeller, and other financial titans who built their fortunes on the same principles Nathan had perfected: secrecy, leverage, and timing. The blueprint of the modern capitalist system traced back to one decision: a banker's quiet defiance during Napoleon's reign. Every skyscraper rising in New York's financial district was, in spirit, a monument to that legacy, to the moment when one man realized that control over information meant dominion over destiny itself. The 1929 crash would again prove how fragile even the strongest empires of finance could be. Yet the lessons of Rothschild endured: diversify, communicate, anticipate. While markets burned, his descendants weathered the storm, relying on century-old wisdom rather than speculation. They understood that finance, like empire, is cyclical, and that survival depends not on avoiding collapse, but preparing for it. The betrayal that once toppled Napoleon had become a philosophy: in every fall lies another's rise. Those who could read the signs before the crowd could own the future, just as Nathan did with a single look at Waterloo. In the mid-20th century, the world embraced central banking, the idea that money must serve stability, not chaos. Yet beneath this noble aim lay Rothschild's ultimate vision: a world where credit was sovereign. From the Bank of England to the Federal Reserve, his principles lived on. The same systems that once financed Wellington's army now underpinned global economies. What had begun as a private network of letters and couriers became an institutional framework guiding nations. The betrayal of Napoleon had quietly evolved into the architecture of modern finance, a structure built not on loyalty but on liquidity. Still, not everyone celebrated this legacy. Conspiracies painted the Rothschilds as puppet masters of governments and wars. Their very success made them symbols of mistrust. But history shows something simpler. They thrived because they understood money as communication. While others reacted to events, they anticipated them. While kings ruled by decree, Rothschilds ruled by foresight. The betrayal that defined Nathan was never treason against France. It was faith in information, logic, and the mathematics of survival. His story reminds us that power is rarely seized; it is accumulated, quietly, through centuries of understanding what others refuse to see. Today, the echoes of Nathan's empire still shape our world. Stock exchanges pulse with algorithms instead of messengers, yet the principle remains identical: whoever knows first, profits most. High-frequency traders are the digital heirs of Rothschild couriers. Information remains the most valuable currency, and timing, the purest weapon. The difference is speed. What once took days now happens in milliseconds. But the moral dilemma endures: is foresight a virtue, or a betrayal? When markets move before truth arrives, we still replay the ghost of Waterloo, written now not in ledgers and parchment, but in data and code. Looking back, Nathan Mayer Rothschild's betrayal seems almost inevitable. He didn't just oppose Napoleon, he outgrew him. Empires fade because they rely on power. Banks endure because they rely on trust. His act of treachery became an act of creation, a transition from monarchs to markets, from conquests to commerce. Napoleon's cannons roared for a decade. Rothschild's influence has lasted 2 centuries. That is the difference between command and control, between fame and permanence. The banker's betrayal was not the end of an empire, it was the birth of an idea: that finance is the final frontier of power. For historians, his story is both caution and inspiration. It warns of the dangers of unaccountable wealth, yet celebrates the brilliance of strategic vision. Nathan Rothschild turned chaos into currency and risk into rule. He showed that even in the darkest hours of war, information can illuminate paths unseen by kings. But with great insight comes great responsibility. The same hands that rebuild can also destroy. His legacy is not merely riches, but the eternal reminder that money, once freed from morality, can shape, or shatter, the world with silent precision. So when you walk through London's financial district or watch numbers dance across a trading screen, remember, this all began with one man defying an emperor. The banker who betrayed Napoleon didn't just change history, he defined the world we live in. His story is a mirror reflecting our own age of speculation, secrecy, and ambition. The question is not whether his betrayal was justified, but whether we have learned from it. Like, subscribe, and stay curious, because somewhere, even now, another Rothschild is waiting for the next Waterloo.